Come, mortal, and give heed to what I say. I speak to you from ages long ago. I am the Golden Egg of Auletes, the treasure of a mighty king of old. My glory and my light remain unmatched. My purpose softly pulses through the years. And though I lie forgotten in the sand, you yet would do well lending me your ears. No piece of gold has ever matched my worth. No trinket lived the wondrous life I've lived. No bauble ever wandered as I have, nor knew the hands and hearts that I have known. I passed through fire and flame upon my birth, then blood to blood I journeyed toward the heights. From king to king I traveled ever on, until I found the greatest of them all. I was composed of pure and precious gold, the finest of an ancient dynasty. The men who forged me melted ancient coins, far older than the Sphinx upon the sand. Through time beyond all time my tale survived, a whisper buried deep beneath the earth. I hold the greatest story ever told, so listen now and let it stir your soul. My shape was crafted by 100 hands, my destiny by many hundreds more. I was the finest treasure in the land, a gleaming prize no mortal could ignore. And though my fame has faded with the years, I yet will rise to purpose once again. For when I'm lifted from these ancient sands, my light will shine before the world once more. If you knew but a fraction of my path, you'd bow your head and wonder where you stand. If you had seen a tenth of what I've seen, your every sure conviction would collapse. My wisdom and my memory endure, my burden and my blessing are the same. And though my shell lies tarnished by the years, the light I bear will never fade away. I've felt the turning of the wheels of time, I've watched the rise and ruin of the proud. I know the way that mighty empires fall, and how the small can shame the greatest throne. The stars above have wheeled before my sight, as countless generations passed me by. Yet still I wait, preserving what I saw, a truth too strong for dust to hide away. I am a precious treasure in the sand, though none who walk the earth recall my name. No mortal fully grasps the things I've borne, the wonders pressed forever in my heart. My glow may dim, my gold may gather grime, but that which burns within remains unchanged. I testify to you, my mortal friend, I'll stand again when lesser kingdoms fall. And on the day the world is made anew, when all that's hidden rises to the light, the tale I carry shall be told again, and all the earth will see what I have seen. The fire that forged me once will forge again. If you are wise, then it will forge you too. And in that moment, all will know the truth. Of this, my story, I now give to you. 1. I am the Golden Egg of Auletes. My name is strange because it isn't mine. It means the one who plays the desert flute. He was a king of Egypt in his time. Ptolemy, the 12th to bear the name, a noble house laid low by distant Rome. Beneath a sandstone palace on the Nile, in fire and flames, my strange new life began. Within the depths of roaring furnace heat, a gale of flame fed by the bellows' breath, the golden coins with faces of dead kings dissolved a tribute paid by mortal men. The molten metal shed the sun's own light, as dross and imperfections burned away. The craftsman tipped the vessel on its side, and poured my newborn body into form. They left me cooling on a slab of stone, my white-hot glow banked down to sunset red. Then came the tongs and hammers set to work, to shape me into something fine and true. A symbol chosen with an artist's flair, of womb and tomb both I should draw the mind. They curved my sides with patient, measured care, until I stood, a gleaming golden egg. A simple form, yet not one without charm. My beauty was not loud, nor was it vain. In those first hours I thought of nothing much. I knew myself, there wasn't much to know. An egg, you know the shape, a roundish blob, of gold itself a gift fit for a king. And yet I would have been quite satisfied to lay in the nest of a golden hen. The next day brought my makers back to me. Fine tools in hand they knelt before my throne. They tickled, touched, and traced along my shell. Their etchings wandered like a river's course. A lace of lines so fine like angel hairs, and flowers, creatures, stars adorned my face. With every flick and flourish glory grew, and I beheld myself a wondrous sight. The third day, when the artists came to me, they brought with them the finest jewels and gems. With perfect care, they took me in their hands and fed their treasures to me one by one. Along my golden skin, both high and low, they pressed in gems of every color known. They wrapped me in a lace of silver thread, then placed a crown of rubies on my head. That night I lay upon a velvet cloth, the whispered praises ringing in my heart, of men who knew quite well that they had wrought the finest egg that ever graced the earth. The lamp beside me flickered through the night, its dancing light reflected from my gems. There in the stillness I beheld myself, and wondered whether stars felt so adored. What purpose had the artist forged me for? I wondered through the stillness of that night. Such jewels are not bestowed on trifles small, no trinket ever earned such whispered awe. No common man would merit such a gift. The thought sent shivers all around my shell. A king would be so lucky to claim me. Perhaps I was a gift made for a god. At dawn my makers shuffled back at last. By then my patience had worn very thin. What better thing had simple men to do than look upon the glory of my face? I waited for the praise I knew was mine. Had they forgotten why they worked at all? They talked and joked and laughed amongst themselves, and left me sitting unremarked, ignored. When finally they turned back to their charge, I hoped they'd learned to show proper respect. But then one picked me up and squinted down, the lowly creature spat upon my face. He jostled me as though I were a stone, and scoured my skin with coarse and filthy cloth. He poured hot oil and bitter lye on me, then scrubbed until I wept in agony. When finally I lay back on my cloth, my surface blazed just like a newborn star. The world reflected in my gleaming skin. I knew at last I'd reached my final form. Of all the glorious things that ever were, by man or gods made in this fallen world, of all the grace beheld by mortal eyes, there never was such beauty seen as mine. The artists standing over me fell still, their silent breaths like whispered solemn prayers. The oldest of their number bowed his head and said, "Look, lads, at what our hands have wrought. A mighty gift fit for a mighty king. Let's go and show Auletes what we've done." Upon his word, the youngest picked me up and placed me in a fleece-lined copper box. The sandstone pillars passed before my eyes. My servant makers carried me aloft. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floors, like marching drums that beat to call me forth. Into my throne room in my copper box, I was laid down at great Auletes' feet. The mighty king looked down his nose to see, and then I saw his eyes grow wide with glee. He took me in his hands with measured poise, a practiced king, long used to weighing worth. His noble thumb passed over gem and jewel. I felt the tremble passing through his arm. "By Isis' light," he said in reverent tone, "I've never seen a finer gift than this." He raised me high, and I looked down on him, and saw my grand reflection in his eyes. How glorious my form must truly be, to have such deep effect upon a king. To bring a tear to that discerning eye, I must be quite a wondrous sight to see. If such a man should marvel at my form, a lesser heart would surely break in two, to see me in my radiant beaming grace, a golden sun to light a dull gray world. Without another word from any there, the mighty King Auletes bore me up, and placed me high upon a window sill, my rightful place above even his throne. And when the sunlight hit my gems and jewels, I cast a dazzling pattern on the walls. As all assembled laughed and danced with glee, I gazed down at my kingdom far beneath. 2. I sat upon my throne for many days. My subjects looked to me to light their way. From far below the palace in the fields, or on the coursing waters of the Nile, both day and night my shine could still be seen by any who would cast their eyes aloft. High in the palace window I stood tall, a silent star descended from above. My throne room, which I shared with Auletes, became the place that nobles yearned to see. And while they came and bowed before the king, in truth they really came to look at me. Of course I loved to be admired by them, for even eggs appreciate a smile. The sight of me and all my precious gems drew many men from many miles around. For months and months I watched as Egypt toiled. I watched as sturdy farmers worked the land. The river swelled and burst clear of its banks, and flooded over freshly planted fields. When all the water rushed back to the Nile, new life erupted from the rich black soil. Green shoots grew tall, their flowers turned to fruit. and then they dried out in the desert sun. When all the wheat was white and crisp and dry, the people formed a line across the fields. Then step by step they swung their bladed scythes and cut the well-ripe crop down to the ground. Then men with rakes scraped up the golden straw to great big piles that others beat with sticks. The women and the children then went forth to scoop up precious kernels for their bread. And when the reaping day was finally done, they burned all of the stubble in the field. Then men with shovels came and turned the dirt and tossed some of their seeds back in again. From this I learned that for his daily bread, a man must harness water, sun, and soil. And as I watched them work and toil and sweat, I learned that only death can pay for life. Not so for me, the glorious golden egg. I do not need to eat or breathe or sleep. Unlike those mortal men who worked their fields, my purity defies the sands of time. I pitied them, those humans far below, who groaned and strained with all their meager might. Yet in the end they were but wheat themselves, to grow and live and love, then fall and die. One day while I stood thinking, growing wise, of all the things mere mortals fail to see, across the desert sands I saw a troop of strangers riding fast on horses swift. Their dust cloud floated high and blocked the sun, as mothers called their children to run home. I felt the palace rumble as the men of King Auletes' guard rushed into place. 1,000 riders on 1,000 mounts, with red cloaks long and iron spears held high, paraded to the palace square below, then halted and let silence speak their names. Our noble palace guard was sore outmatched. I saw them trembling even where I sat. But though their fear should make them leave their posts, yet every man among them held his oaths. Just as I feared those guards might turn and flee, a noble voice pierced through the silent storm. "Fine friends from Rome, I welcome you at last." Good King Auletes strode before the horde. "You've traveled very far to visit me. I read your master's letter and rejoiced." The words he spoke were honey to the ear, but hiding in that sweet was bitterness. The leader of the strangers ventured forth, upon a mighty steed of midnight black. He swung his leg and dropped down to the bricks. His armor rattled and his red cape swirled. The warrior stalked forward without fear, until his face was inches from the king's. The royal guards all squirmed as they looked on, and King Auletes bowed to kiss his ring. A ripple of confusion, fear, and shame fell like a fog on all who saw the sight. The men from Rome all grinned and raised their chins, while every son of Egypt bit his tongue. And high above that crowd of mortal men, my own pure golden heart fell in despair. It was the first I ever felt ashamed of Egypt and the king who shared my name. The throne room felt much smaller in my sight. My palace window didn't feel as high. Until that moment I thought just the sun could hope to match the splendor of this land. But now I knew a greater kingdom still was hidden somewhere far beyond my sight. This man to whom my King Auletes bowed was but a servant of that greater might. The Roman's footsteps shook the palace halls. The throne room doors burst open at his touch. He strode across the marble floors and sat himself upon the king of Egypt's throne. "Come, King Auletes," said the man in red. "You know why I've been sent to see you here. My master holds your kingdom by the throat. He'll close his fist if you don't send him gold." That last word echoed through the quiet room. The king of Egypt stared down at his feet. The shame I felt at seeing him laid low called forth a golden blush upon my skin. That I should bear the name of such a man was simply more than my proud heart could bear. I turned my gems to flash the stranger's eye. If gold is what he wants, then gold he'll get. My splendid sparkling filled the gloomy room. Auletes' sad eyes raised and saw me there. The mighty Roman traced his mournful gaze and landed on my golden, glistening form. "Please, sire, that egg is precious," said the king. "It shines on high and gives my people hope." "Hope?" sneered the Roman. "That I don't return. I'll take your pretty egg to Rome with me." When poor old King Auletes looked again, he saw my gems no longer shined for him. He bowed his head and bid the Roman take me far away and leave his people be. And as the price of peace I was thus sold and handed to an even greater king. I felt no sorrow as I left that place. Auletes was not worthy of my light. 3. I lay upon a sweaty dirt-caked palm, a moment while the Roman stared at me. His hungry smile showed sand stuck in his teeth, my glitter gleam reflected in his eyes. Then in a single fluid motion I was plopped into a little leather bag. The Roman tied me to his waist and said, "Farewell, and may we never meet again." If King Auletes spoke, I did not hear. Perhaps that is a mercy after all. For if I live 100,000 years, I won't forget that look upon his face. A son of kings whose fathers ruled the world, of living gods whose voices shook the ground. To kneel and have his treasures stripped away, left in a crumbling palace with his flute. Goodbye, old king, the world is moving on. No tears or pleading sobs can change your fate. Perhaps if your ancestors were still here, the land which you call home would still be great. And yet, I'm not a cruel, unfeeling egg. Those days I loved your people served me well. I learned much about life and grew so wise. But now it seems I have outgrown you all. I cannot weep for how things might have been, or dwell upon those memories so sweet. For in those days I thought that I had reached the pinnacle of all life had to give. But now I see you all for what you are, a shabby people with a tiny king. To give up one like me without a fight, I can't believe I shared my light with you. For many hours I rattled in that bag, tossed on the roar of thundering horses' hooves. I thought of both my future and my past, and wondered at the wonders I might see. When finally the horses all fell still, I waited for the bag to open up. The muffled sounds of men and horses rose. I strained to hear the questions in the air. "Look lively, men," a voice like lightning fell. "We'll stop and build our campfires here tonight." The Roman's booming voice shook through my shell. His charge was answered with a hearty cheer. Then all around the soldiers set to work. Their practiced hands made quick work of the camp. Before long they were sitting by their fires, and all the while I was left in the dark. Just then the thought came prowling through my mind. It surfaced like those crocodiles I've seen, whose yellow eyes peer through the river's murk. It made my golden heart rebound with fear. How long since last somebody looked at me? I've spent at least a day trapped in the dark. And since the first time since I got my name, no person looked upon me and adored. Would I still be a treasure if unseen, with no one left to look upon my face? What if this little leather bag was lost and covered over by the desert sand? Till now I thought my worth was manifest, my greatness was a truth unto itself. But if my light is nowhere to be seen, how could my greatness ever then be known? But no, I thought, that wouldn't be my fate. My Roman master claimed me for himself. He only did so when he saw my worth. I'll be a treasure to him, after all. More likely, I'll be one of many more. That idea somehow troubled me as well. I was the best of King Auletes' court. I might be just a bauble when in Rome. The thought of being simple, plain and small, disturbed me as I languished in the dark. But then I felt the slipping of the cord. The chill of evening desert touched my skin. And up above me loomed a hungry eye, and underneath that eye a hungry grin. I heard the way his breath caught in his throat, and then I knew my fears had been in vain. He turned the bag, I tumbled through the air, and landed in his rough old soldier's hands. He held me up so all his men could see the starlight as it filtered through my jewels. A thrill ran through the crowd, and then a cheer, a mighty gift fit for a mighty king, and every man among them spoke aloud. I was the finest thing they'd ever seen. Well, all except a foolish little man who really wasn't much more than a boy. He said indeed my beauty was unmatched, but paled before his sweetheart back in Rome. The soldiers laughed and teased the heartsick lad, though I could see a reverence in their eyes. And one by one those battle-hardened men turned inward to remember lady loves. Around their campfires soldiers spoke and sang of battles fought and maidens won and lost. And in those stories I beheld a truth. A man can hold much treasure in his heart. These brutish men who laughed and teased like boys had mothers who once bounced them on their knees. Those bonds of gold reflected in their smiles, reminding me of what I'd never have. And just like that, my fears returned again. My fate was not to die, but fade away. To think that I might end up in some drawer. No, I won't be ignored without a fight. And so I pulled and breathed with all my strength, I drew on both the starlight and the fire, then all at once released a glorious glow and warmth that won the sight of every man. The men fell silent as they stared wide-eyed at lustrous gold and gems in perfect form. Their reverent stares filled me again with pride. Even the lad forgot his girl back home. But then another heartbeat passed and I saw humble awe replaced by something else. Love turned to greed behind their glowing eyes. Each man turned wolf desired me for himself. "That's quite enough of that," their captain said. He dropped me back into my leather cage. And just like that, the spell my beauty cast was broken, and the beasts returned to men. "Rest up, my friends, tomorrow's trail is tough. Our master in Judea waits for us." As they all slept, I lay awake and swore I'd never try to tempt these men again. 4. The crickets sang and wolves howled far away. The Roman held me close beneath his breast. I heard the campfires crackle, and I thought, upon the day I sprang forth from the forge. Those artists who had made me with such care could not imagine where I'd be tonight. The perfect gift to carry back to Rome, a grandness even they could not predict. Although I did not see the sun come up, I felt the desert heat within my pouch. And soon the Roman coughed and stirred, then rose, and bid his men to wake and strike their camp. I heard the clatter as the tents came down. I heard the eager horses snort and stamp. I bounced and swung in darkness to and fro, and jostled as the Roman climbed his mount. I couldn't bear another sightless day, within my leather bag hidden from view, and so I gathered all the light I could, then called out to the Roman in his heart. To my surprise, it seemed he heard my plea. He fumbled in his cloak to find my pouch. I sensed his eyes upon me through the sack, and did my best to help him know my will. I felt the Roman's greed shake through his hands. He wanted nothing more than to be known. A nameless soldier in a nameless place. He yearned for greatness. I yearned to be seen. Perhaps we both could have our heart's desires. I told him he should show me to the world. He smiled and tied the pouch around his neck, then cut a little hole so I could see. My golden light spilled from the Roman's chest. I shone as I rejoiced to see the sky. Then with a yell the captain spurred his horse, and forward like an arrow we took flight. The other soldiers joined our headlong rush, dry dirt and dust displaced with every step. The fighting pride of Rome let out a yell, and rolled like thunder down that desert road. Miles and minutes came and swiftly passed. My heart soared as the world rushed by my sight. For the first time I envied mortal men, to live with such exhilarating pace. I felt the horse's strength beneath me surge. It passed clear through the Roman and to me. But beasts of flesh and blood can only run so long before their thirst will make them faint. Thus when a green oasis came to view, the Roman captain steered his men to stop. Like bellows heaving, horses caught their breath, while riders left them resting in the shade. My captain led a half a dozen men to draw up water from a nearby well. As buckets filled, there came a weathered man who limped toward the soldiers on his cane. The old man begged them for a sip to drink, and in exchange he'd tell them all a tale. The Roman smiled and handed him a cup. He drank it dry and then began to speak. The tale, he said, was older than the sand, yet one that could be grasped by any child, about a donkey who yearned to be free, whose heartless master tied him to a tree. The donkey stood out in the desert sun. The rope around its neck led to a chain. The chain was made of blackened iron links. The donkey, though he tried, could never break. With all his strength he strained against the bonds, till giving up he hung his head and sighed. Then at his feet he saw a little mouse, and heard the little creature as it spoke. "Hello, my friend, I see that you are stuck. Someone has chained you to that fine fig tree. I see that you have all but given up, but follow me and soon you will be free." At that the mouse ran to the other side. The donkey followed, pulling at the chain. And when the donkey reached the little mouse, the mouse ran back around the tree again. The donkey followed round and round the tree. It chased the wily mouse all through the night. At dawn the mouse stopped running and called back, "Just turn around and see what you have done." And when the donkey looked back at the tree, it saw the way the chain had chewed the wood. With one great kick the fig tree snapped and fell. The donkey leapt and sang a loud hee-haw. Without a word of thanks the donkey ran. Exulting he was free to go his way. The clever mouse walked to the fallen tree and ate the figs that he could finally reach. The old man laughed and slapped his crooked knee, then stood and stooping turned to walk away. A Roman soldier asked him what it meant. The old man grinned, a ragged yellow smile. "It's just a story told to pass the time. There's really not much to it, truth be told. It makes a fine distraction, though, I've found, when wealthy strangers wander to our well." The Roman captain growled, "You crippled fool! You waste our time on useless children's tales." "Perhaps I did so," said the crooked man, "to get that pretty trinket around your neck." Those last words sent a shiver through my shell. I hadn't noticed when he'd noticed me. Yet even from a distance I could see. His cloudy eyes were fixed upon my pouch. The captain drew his sword and called for help. He must have seen something that I could not. Perhaps it was his instincts born of war. At any rate, his orders came too late. The sand exploded all around the well as men in black robes burst up from the ground. The Romans there were outmatched 3-1, their comrades back at camp too far away. The clash of metal shuddered through my shell. The battle, swift and brutal, had begun. The Romans fought with courage back to back, but could not hope to stand through the assault. I don't remember much of what I saw. In truth, I've tried to block it from my mind. The captain fought and fell, and I was bathed in blood as I was cut free from his throat. The other Romans rushed up to the scene, 1,000 strong and eager for revenge. The bandits had already turned to flee, their prize in hand, a blood-soaked golden egg. 5. What awful fate to fall into the hands of beastly cowards, scoundrels, thieves, and rogues. My dreams of glory in a moment dashed. I knew then that I'd never get to Rome. And yet had I not only yesterday rejoiced at being taken from my home? I thought that I had joined the stronger side. Those Romans now lay bleeding in the sand. By my own logic, shouldn't I be pleased to be in even stronger hands than theirs? No, it was not their power I admired. It was the glory that came from their strength. I only wished to stand and shine on high, to be adored by king and servant both. And now I find myself a spoil of war, of creatures who have never seen a bath. I prayed the Romans weren't far behind, but my new captors knew the desert well. They swiftly made their way up to a cliff and climbed the jagged rocks to winding trails. The Romans, in their heavy armor scales, dared not to leave their horses and pursue. By nightfall, they had lost the bandits' trails, and we were deep within a secret cave. With torches lit, I looked upon the scene. I saw the squalid, filthy way they lived. The thieves all laughed and shouted at their spoils, and placed me on a dirty, greasy plate. I could not stand to be so poorly kept. Did they not even sense what they had snatched? I drew the torchlight deep within myself, then let it out in one bright golden breath. The brigands all fell silent at the sight. Of course, that's just the thing I'd hoped they'd do. Perhaps I could persuade them to return and beg the Roman king to spare their lives. Their silence did not last for long enough for them to thus reflect upon their sins. They broke into an argument so loud I couldn't hear myself think anymore. I tried to stun them once again with light, but now they were all blinded by their greed. I'd tempted them beyond what they could stand, and now each man desired me for himself. A massive one-eyed beast broke through the crowd. He bellowed like a bull and drew a knife, then rushed up to my greasy, tarnished throne and plunged the rusty dagger down on me. A bolt of lightning screamed along my shell. The stinky Cyclops stabbed into my skin. He dug a shining sapphire out, then turned, and wordless walked away into the dark. The other thieves assembled watched him go, then turned and cast their greedy eyes on me. He'd shown them all a clever way to take me bit by bit so all could have a piece. Another filthy brigand came to me and smiled down at me like a bird of prey. "I'll take this silver lacy stuff," he said, then drew his knife and cut and sliced away. The work of loving craftsmanship destroyed, my pride and joy was sorely stripped away. His gruesome work complete, the bandit laughed, then held my silver lace up to the light. "I wanted that," a voice called from the crowd. Another answered, claiming he spoke first. And just like that, their knives were in their hands, and in a flash they slashed and stabbed their friends. Their screams and curses rattled through the cave as I lay mutilated and defiled. Between my sorrows I felt fury burn. I hoped they'd all be dead when all was done. Within the maelstrom I beheld a girl. She crept up through the shadows while men fought. and as they set to slaughtering and strife, she sprang into the light and snatched me up. Quick as a flash and silent as a snake, she sprinted from the cave and out of sight. She leapt upon a waiting camel and, beneath a moonlit sky, fled to the east. I writhed in pain, my very soul seemed scorched. My glory was now all but gone from me. I did my best to draw the starlight in, but found the light no longer entered me. For such a fate to fall on such as I, there is no justice in this fallen world, and for the first time I despaired to think that I should never die and rest in peace. For 7 days and nights the maiden fled, as though the devil whispered in her ear. I heard her ragged breathing, and I saw wild eyes that knew the cost of being caught. Upon the 7th sunset we arrived, a blackened city full of blackened hearts. My maiden master bartered me away for 2 white horses and a jar of wine. The man she bought the horses from was cruel. He raised the animals to use for sport, and when the beasts could no longer compete, he cut their throats and turned them into stew. Because he knew the best of what he bred, he gambled on the outcome of each race. But when a rival poisoned his best horse, he had to give me up to pay the debt. I never even bothered with their names. I had 6 masters in as many nights. Each one of them was killed by one who saw me and decided he could not resist. In brutal backstabs I was bought and sold, to men with hearts as bloody as their blades. And everything I thought I knew of life was tainted by those days spent in the East. My body was a broken, sorry thing. My gems and jewels had all been picked away. A lump of malformed gold shaped like an egg was all I really came to in the end. I wept to know how far I'd fallen from my home in King Auletes' noble halls, and as I changed hands time and time again, I held on to a flicker of my light. My gruesome journey through those filthy streets, from one poor wretched creature to the next, it seemed the only people who could hold, by brutal power, numb to any pain, onto the golden egg that they all sought, were those who felt no guilt at what they did. Far from the honor I had once enjoyed, I was a treasure won by lies and blood. 6. While in the blackened city in the east, I saw the worst that wicked men can do. I was the price paid for a young girl slave. I was a bribe paid to a city guard. I watched in silence as a father drank some wine that had been poisoned by his son. With each new horror each new master brought, I learned this world of ours is very cruel. As I was traded hand to blood-stained hand, the light within me dimmed and nearly died. The ragged wounds around my skin still ached. My golden luster faded down to bronze. I pulled my light down to my deepest core and made myself go numb to all the rest. I hid inside my broken shell and tried not to think about who held me that day. A crooked pair accounting for their crime had split their plunder half and half to each. When all the ill-earned gain was divvied up, the last a single golden egg remained. When one thief reached to take me, he stopped short. His partner held a dagger in his hand. He snarled and said he'd played the bigger part in stealing all the treasure from their marks. The dagger man just shrugged, a deal's a deal. Let's split the little golden egg in 2. Upon those words he raised the savage blade, to carve me up and spill my inner light. I was afraid, yet truth be told, I thought, perhaps it would be fine for this to end. At any rate, my fears and hopes both stalled, when Dagger Man's blade slashed into his friend. Another double cross, surprise, surprise. I should have seen it coming, so should he. The man who trusted in this blackened city was but a fool who earned a fool's reward. That night when Dagger Man grew drunk and loud, he boasted of his deeds to all around. Then through the smoky tavern men came forth, who dragged my master out into the night. They brought him to a warehouse by the docks, and beat him till his face was black and blue. Then out of darkened shadows stepped a man, whose face was covered by a black silk shroud. The boards beneath his feet creaked as he stepped, and beams of meager moonlight lit his form. Of all the men I'd ever seen before, this was the biggest of them all by far. The giant spoke, his voice like cracking stone, born of a barrel chest and ragged throat. My men say you have won a lot of loot. You claim you've stolen your own weight in gold. And though you are a shriveled, stunted thing, your weight in gold is still a hefty prize. Yet even with your happy little hoard, my men tell me they haven't seen an ounce. I felt the little man begin to shake. I nearly slipped unbidden from his purse. He squeaked and whimpered like a cornered rat. I'll get your gold, I promise you, my king. "You fool," the giant's voice cracked like a whip, "to flatter me with titles I despise. You should have been more careful with your tongue. Just enemies call me the Leper King." With that, the giant reached up to his mask and pulled the shroud away in one swift move. The rat man gave a single startled squeak, then dropped down quickly and began to beg. "You know the stories men tell about me," the giant all but whispered through the night. "No man can ever see my face and live. So save your prayers for someone who can feel." The giant snapped his fingers, and his men picked up my little master like a child. "Wait, I have gold, I'll give it to you now. Look in my pocket, take my golden egg." The giant laughed. "You should have said so first. I might have even spared your wretched life. Instead, you hoped to keep it for yourself. It must be quite a special little egg." In moments, I was in the giant's hand. He looked at me through sickly yellow eyes. He rolled me on his rotten fingertips, then sniffed as though he wasn't too impressed. Indignity rose sharply through my shell that I should be ignored by such as him. I drew a breath to dazzle with my light, but only managed one brief golden flash. His broken lips curled, showing bleeding gums, a rotting smile to match a rotting heart. He snorted as he tossed me in the air. A mighty gift fit for a mighty king. With that, I fell into a dirty pouch of copper clips and tarnished silver slugs. How far I'd fallen from Auletes' court, the least among this rotten chieftain's coins. I heard my former master's cries cut short, to silent stillness followed by a splash. The murky river swallowed like a snake, then slithered on as though he'd never been. I wondered if he'd kept me in his purse. Would I be better off than I am now? I might have floated with him to the sea. From there, I might have made it up the Nile. Or maybe I'd just sink down like a stone and lie upon the muddy riverbed. And when the currents buried me in silt, I'd rest in peaceful slumber for all time. And then the famous egg of Auletes would slip from every mortal memory. I'd be forgotten, which I greatly feared. At least the leper might look at my shine. And after all, it might not be so bad. Perhaps I had misjudged this Leper King. He seemed a cruel and calloused creature, yes. No feeling in his fingers or his heart. Yet people seemed to know him far and wide. That was a sort of glory on its own. If I could show this wretched man my light, perhaps he'd share my glory with the world. My days of dazzling might not yet be done, if I could only breathe the light once more. If like this Leper King I could not feel, the shame and pain might fade away from me. And with that meager hope I made a plan. The light within me sparked a little more. Although it seemed I'd fallen very far, I'd rise back up in glory once again. 7. My hope still flickered faintly in my shell. The hope that even after all the pain, I might still have a place of pride somewhere. Yes, even serving for the Leper King. I'd trade the little light within my heart, return to just an ordinary egg. I'd give the gift of thought within my mind, if I could just be wonderful again. But then I found myself upon a pile of gold and silver trinkets, gems, and jewels, beside the Leper King's decrepit throne, within a splintered box of rotting wood. And as the city's crooks came to his court, the Leper King took tribute from them all. He kept the finest trophies for himself, and tossed the lesser pieces in my pile. Thus, day by day, I was surrounded by the lowest of a leper's pile of gold. He kept us all together in a box, a symbol of his wealth to all who saw. My fragile pride was hanging by a thread, to find myself reduced to such a lot, to be an ugly lump within a crowd, and not the pride and joy of some great king. As grubby thieves and cutthroats came and went, the pile around me grew a little more, until I saw I'd soon be covered up, my fate to be forgotten like the rest. I wondered at the lowest copper coin, beneath me at the bottom of this chest. How long since it had seen the light of day? How long till it would see it once again? My round bald head was all that could be seen. The rest had been completely covered up. Then I beheld a servant girl approach, to whisper in the leper's rotten ear. From where I sat, I saw his eyes grow wide. He stood and shouted loudly, "Bring him in." The wooden door creaked open, and I heard the clink of heavy chains upon the floor. I turned my gaze toward the leper's guest. My heart fell flat as I beheld the man. His body, stooped with age, was clothed in rags. He looked as though he'd starved for 40 days. His hair was thin and greasy, long and gray. One eye was half closed by a purple bruise. His hands shook slightly in their iron cuffs. His bare feet shuffled on the creaking boards. The thug behind him kicked him in the back and sent the old man sprawling to the floor. "We found him in the palace prison, sir." The shriveled voice came from a shriveled face. "The emperor had kept him there a year. He's set to hang tomorrow for the crime of poisoning the minds of all the youth, with talk of so-called justice, light, and truth." "You will not touch my honored guest again." The leper's stony growl cut through the room. The shriveled grunt retreated with a bow, but did not stop to lift the prisoner. The frail old man got slowly to his feet. His trembling knobby knees shook as he stood. Then right before my eyes he straightened up. His steely eyes shone proudly from his face. "You're Zeno, son of Daimo, are you not? Your name has reached my ears from far away." The old man raised his chin up and replied, "And I suppose you are the Leper King." "Don't call me that," the angry giant snarled. "No man who says that name can hope to live. But then you're doomed already if I send you to the Emperor's prison cells again." "I don't fear death," the old man whispered back. "For all my days I've served the god of light." The massive leper flexed his massive hands and stepped to tower over and look down. With bloodshot yellowed eyes that burned with hate, he loomed a lump of leprous, towering flesh. "A man can suffer much before he dies." The threat of violence dripped from rotten lips. "To suffer is a part of every life." The old man's dark eyes never turned away. "But even if you beat and break my bones, you still can't take the good days I have had." "Well said, my friend," the leper gave a laugh. "I see now why the people call you brave. Come now, you do not need to die at all. If you will serve me, I can save your life." But Zeno said, "I shall not be your slave. Though I am doomed to die, I will die free." The Leper King drew angry once again. He clenched his fists and shook with white-hot rage. Yet even so, the wise man still stood tall. I'd never seen such strength from any man. Inspired, the light within me roared to life, and from my box I caught old Zeno's eye. The old man smiled and glanced back at the king. "I know the reason you have brought me here. You've heard my healer's hands can cure your flesh. Your wicked flesh that's cursed to rot away. And though I'd like to know you'll soon be dead, I feel the eyes of God upon this night. I'll heal you, then you'll set me free and give a single piece of treasure from that chest." The giant turned to look upon his hoard. He knew his finest treasures weren't there. He pulled his silken shroud off of his face, then smiled and turned back to his prisoner. "You've seen my face now, you know what that means. The die is cast, now come and meet your fate. Heal me and take your token out the door, but fail and I shall kill you where you stand." Good Zeno stepped toward him without fear. "I warn you, there is power in my hands. If you should try to break your oath with me, the curse shall fall upon your flesh again." With that, his hand shot out like wrinkled snakes and grabbed the giant leper's rotting face. A whispered word, the Leper King was healed. He fell down to his knees and wept with joy. Without another sound, the wise man stood. His shackles fell and clattered on the floor. With head held high, he walked up to my box and looked right at me with a knowing smile. "This little golden egg must have a part, some role to play yet in God's greater plan." He stooped, and as his finger touched my skin, my shell exploded with a golden light. 8. The man once called the Leper King was true. In keeping with his word, he let us go. I thrilled to be in wise old Zeno's hand, and had to fight to keep my glowing down. My newfound master warned me not to show my noble nature now to any man. Until we passed beyond the city walls, Zeno and I would travel in disguise. We both were smuggled silently outside, with 7 sturdy thugs as our escort. They led us from the docks and down a path long used for sneaking swiftly through the dark. When our group made it to the lower gate, we found the guards were nowhere to be seen. "Be on your way, King Zeno," said one brute, who tipped his hat and turned to close the gate. The thug had said King Zeno, had he not? I wondered as I gazed up at the man. "I'm not a king," said Zeno as he raised me up and smiled as he felt my surprise. "No, I can't hear you, not like that at least, though I can sense you thinking in that shell. You've traveled far and seen much, little friend, but there's far more to this world than you know." He held me in his fingers as he walked, so I could see the white light of the moon. He rubbed along my surface as he talked of how we came to meet on such a night. I feared my God had left me to my fate, though I'm ashamed to tell you of such doubt. But then I saw your shining and I knew why I've been left in darkness for a year. He laughed, a pleasant sound that warmed me up. I watched as months of pain fell from his face, and as the city faded far behind, he seemed a younger man with every stride. I sat in Zeno's hand for 7 days and listened as he told me what he knew. I wondered every day till we arrived what Zeno's palace window overlooked. When Zeno told me he was not a king, that it was just a name some people used, I thought perhaps it was just modesty, until our journey's end that 7th day. To call his home a shack would be a stretch. In truth, it was a cave that had a door. And when that door unlocked, we stepped inside. A dusty pile of books was all he had. But as I cast my vision on that pile, I noticed that it stretched from wall to wall. On one side of the room there was a cot, the other side a table and a chair. A fireplace was carved into the wall, and over it there hung a sturdy pot. As Zeno stepped inside, he breathed a sigh and said, "Welcome home, my little golden friend." If there had been a nose upon my face, I would have wrinkled it to show distaste. The room was better than the leper's box, but nothing like old King Auletes' court. I sense it's not the palace you had hoped, but someday you will see the way I can. These books that lie before you in this room can take you any place you'd like to go. If he could sense my thoughts, he ought to know how little care I had for little books. Perhaps he had forgotten I'm an egg. It's hard to turn the pages without hands. Good Zeno sat me on his tabletop. I watched him as he crouched to set the fire. He chopped some roots and tossed them in the pot. In minutes, they were simmering away. He sat down at the table with a book and wiped the dusty cover with his sleeve. He said, "I'm picking up where I left off. I've yearned to know the ending for a year." And as he read, he took me in his hand. He rolled me back and forth across his palm. The fire warmed the air within the cave, and in that moment, I began to glow. When Zeno saw my light, he paused and smiled. And then he turned a page and cleared his throat. His steady voice began to read aloud, a story of some kingdom far away. At first, my thoughts kept wandering from the book. I couldn't focus on his words at all. But then he mentioned Egypt and the Nile, and earned my full attention once again. My surface shined much brighter than before, as I thought back to days that I had spent. A treasure in the window of a king, encrusted head to foot with precious gems. The thought of what I'd lost pierced like a thorn, my silver lace and all those gleaming jewels. And now I was a pockmarked little lump, resembling only vaguely what I was. "I have some books on Egypt," Zeno said. "I see it is a land close to your heart. I'd guess that is the place where you were born, though only kings of Egypt have much gold. No wonder I could feel you start to shine that night when someone said I was a king." He fetched a little book out of the pile, then opened it and read to me aloud. He read of Egypt, then he read of Rome, as days stretched into weeks and then to months. I learned to hang upon his every word. Just as he'd said, they led me far away. I sailed across the sea upon a storm. I heard a lion's roar inside my mind. I rescued pretty damsels in distress. I even slayed a dragon with a sword. Each time he read, he rolled me in his hand and pressed his gentle fingers on my skin. And day by day I saw, to my delight, the motion had restored my polished shine. I was remade anew within that cave. His loving care and patience made me whole. The bitter dreams and memories I had now seemed as far away as Egypt did. Through all those many months in Zeno's hands, I thought upon the words that he'd first said, that some great power, known to him as God, had some important part for me to play. The books I read with Zeno filled my mind, but couldn't fill the hole within my heart. For I was made to shine bright and be seen. An audience of one was not enough. 9. The months passed swiftly in that lonely cave. The seasons passed and winter turned to spring. Good Zeno spent his evenings in his cave, but in the daylight hours we ventured out. The village in the valley far below, a place where Zeno always drew a crowd. The people came to him from far and wide. He healed their sick and taught them wrong from right. In his own way, he really was a king. His people loved him, and they looked to him. Yet he would not accept a scrap of pay, except a loaf of bread or bag of roots. They called him master, yet he never gave commands except they love and serve their friends. He was as fine a man as there could be. To serve his God, he gave all of himself. One night, as I was sitting by the fire, I sat and watched the dancing of the flames. Their light and heat rolled over me in waves. Their power and their hunger called to me. I knew that I could shine more bright than they, if Zeno ever let me show my light. I trusted him and owed him my whole life, but still I yearned for glory of my own. There was a knock, a pounding at the door, and Zeno startled suddenly awake. Who'd call at such a late hour of the night? Who knew the way to find his hidden cave? As Zeno's quiet footsteps paced the floor, there came another knocking from outside. He bid me not to shine, and then he said, "Stay hidden, friend. I'll go see who it is." The door unlocked and opened just a crack, and Zeno called the question, "Who goes there?" "We've come to see you, Magi," said one voice. "Come, let us in," a second voice replied. I saw old Zeno straighten up and smile. He swung the wooden door to open wide, and in came two tall, handsome, dark-skinned men, who wise Zeno embraced with open arms. "Vinicius and Phili, welcome home. It's been too many years since you were here. Yet tales of your fine deeds have reached my cave. Two finer students I have never had. For better friends a man could never ask. You honor me with every step you take. Yet, please forgive me, I feel I must ask, what trouble brings you to my humble cave?" "Dear Magi," said the taller of the two, "it pleases us to see that you are well. If we have earned you honor with our deeds, it is the very least we owe to you. You gave us all the wisdom that we have. You taught us sacred truths that we still hold. Our feet are firmly planted on the path you set us on so many years ago." "Indeed, we love you, Magi, that's a fact," the shorter man said through a wider smile. "It seems to me you haven't changed a bit. You never liked to go outside at night. You asked us why we've come to see you now? It pleases us to know something you don't. For now it seems that Zeno, great and wise, has not yet seen the new star in the sky." A pregnant pause descended on the room, as Zeno stared slack-jawed up at the men. "You shouldn't tease a poor old man, my boys. My aged heart can only take so much." He waited for the men to crack a smile, admit they were in fact pulling his leg. But when he saw no falsehood in their eyes, he nearly knocked them over in his flight. I heard their muffled voices from outside, and strained to hear a single word they said. A moment later, they came back inside. All three of them had tears upon their cheeks. The men sat on the floor and crossed their legs, while Zeno turned and fell into his chair. With trembling voice, a whisper passed his lips. "I never thought I'd live to see the day." "A brand new star can only mean one thing," the taller of the students whispered back. "The glowing sign has long been prophesied. The King of Kings will soon be born on earth." A reverent silence fell upon the room. The fire was crackling softly in the hearth, and even I, a metal golden egg, could feel the warmth did not come from the flames. "We came to you as quickly as we could," the smaller student said it with a smile. 11 nights ago we saw the star. We packed our things and left before the dawn. Our weary feet have carried us to you. We marked the star's position night by night. We calculated many miles to go, if we want to be there when he is born. I know you're not as young as you once were. The taller man had worry in his eyes. You've waited for this day for all your life. We'll carry you the whole way if we must. Then Zeno sprang up sprightly to his feet. You'll have to run to keep a pace with me, for even if I drop dead the next day, I'll see the Prince of Peace before I'm done. From where I sat, I watched the three wise men. I wondered at the words I'd heard them say. This King of King and Prince of Peace of theirs intrigued me more than any story yet. As Zeno rushed to pack his meager things, I heard a golden palace call my name. I dreamed that I was in the window of the greatest, tallest throne room in the world. The short, wise man stared at the pile of books. He had a queasy look upon his face. I recognize most every copy here. You made us read them all back in the day. Perhaps the newborn king would like a book. I know a few that would put him to sleep. Of course, we brought our own gifts for the prince, the precious spices, frankincense, and myrrh. Fine gift, my friends, and very wisely thought. Your gifts will serve him well in days to come. I'll bring a book or two to give the babe. You know I don't have much else I could give. But as it happens, I have something new. God works his will in strange and wondrous ways." Then Zeno dipped his head to me and said, "A mighty gift fit for a mighty king." 10. We left before the sunrise on our way. The 3 men carried little on their backs. As Zeno turned to look back at his home, he said, "I'll never see this place again. My time grows short. This trip will be my last. Farewell to all my dear beloved books." "We'll bring you back," the taller wise man said, "or someday you'll be buried in that cave." That morbid thought made Zeno laugh and smile. Such human sentiments are lost on me, for even if my light goes out someday, I don't want to be buried in the ground. A golden sunset rose upon the day to light up the resolve on Zeno's face. And as his future grave fell out of sight, I marveled at the quickness of his pace. At every step he held me in his hand and rolled me on his wrinkled fingertips. My skin was now as polished as it was the first time I was given to a king. The gems and jewels and silver lace were gone. All that remained was purest gleaming gold. I hoped my simple shape would be enough to show my worth and please the King of Kings. My heart thrilled at the thought of seeing him, of being in the presence of such might. To think I had been chosen for the role, prepared by such unlikely circumstance. To fall so far from glory as I had, and land upon the reason I exist. The light within me burned so brightly now, it lit the path before us through the night. We walked all through the first day and the next, until the afternoon of the 3rd day. When Zeno, stumbling, fell upon his hands, we stopped to rest beneath a shady tree. The taller of the wise men picked him up, and held him while the shorter checked his feet. He winced when he saw all the blistered sores, and bid his master lie upon the ground. "I fear my strength was sapped while in the cells. The emperor is not known for his grace." Then Zeno sat and wiped his sweating brow. "I'm sorry, friends, I'll need to rest a bit." The shorter wise man nodded to agree. The other one still stood with hands on hips. "Rest quickly, Magi, many miles to go. We'll have to hurry up to get there first." Wise Zeno smiled and gently told his friend, "You don't need to be first to have a place." He looked down at my golden face and said, "Or be the greatest to have any worth. The fastest does not always win the race. The strongest man can still lose in a fight. When time and chance mix with the will of God, I've found I always end up where I should." The tallest wise man bit his cheek and said, "But surely our own efforts count for some. You taught us how to work with all our might. I know the words you've spoken now are true. I do not doubt your wisdom or your strength. I only worry we will be too late. To miss the greatest moment of all time, I cannot bear to think of such a fate." "One thing that you are yet to learn, my friend," said Zeno as he stood and straightened up. "God does not mock the faithful while they pray, nor laugh to feed us some ironic twist. You've served him all your life up to this day. Trust him as well, he won't lead you astray. Come, brother, let us spend what strength we have, and in a coming day we'll meet our Lord." Though all could see good Zeno was in pain, undaunted will propelled him step by step, and when the sun went down we stopped to rest, and sat in silence staring at the star. The wise men set their tools and checked their charts, and guessed at how much further we had yet. Old Zeno slept to build back up his strength. His age was showing more with each new day. I listened to him softly snore and thought the world had never known a nobler man. Yet as I lay there, cradled in his palm, I marveled at the glory of the star. What sort of man could call on such a thing? To light a star as some men light a lamp. My former King Auletes, though he claimed to be a god, had done no thing like that. This King of Kings I've heard so much about, the one who claims the heavens for himself. I wonder where his mighty kingdom lies, and why I haven't heard of it till now. "He is the Son of God himself," I heard a whisper from the sleeping Zeno's lips. His answer to my question once again surprised me, for he seemed to know my thoughts. A few short hours later he awoke, and stood upon his shaky, sore old legs. The younger two got swiftly to their feet. We struck the camp and set off before the dawn. I sensed my master's strength was wearing thin. His breathing grew more ragged as we walked, and though his smile came often to his lips, His voice was more hoarse every time he spoke. The desert sun beat down on us by day. We shivered through the darkness of the night. Their lips were chapped and blisters burned their feet. They treasured every precious sip to drink. At night the men told stories and they sang, great tales and songs of light and prophecy, till one night Zeno opened up his mouth, and rasping coughs were all he could produce. "Farewell, my friends, I shall not speak again. My meager strength must stay down in my feet. When I kneel to the king, I shall not rise. I'll sing with you in heaven when we meet." With that, he closed his eyes and bowed his head. Not dead, but not exactly full of life. The younger men looked sadly back at him, as tears went flowing freely down their cheeks. "Hold on for one more day," the short man said, "for we are right beneath the holy star. In Bethlehem is where we'll find our king, in David's city, just as prophesied. We'll wait until the morning, then we'll rise, and get there by this time tomorrow night. Rest easy, Magi, gather your last strength. Your journey is now nearly at an end." 11. The day began like any other day. The sun rose in the east sky just the same. The weary wise men walked with measured steps. Their destiny called to them from on high. When Zeno could no longer lift his feet, the master leaned upon the student's arm. His mouth hung open as he fought for breath. His eyes were pinched tight shut against the pain. Yet all the while he held me in his hand. I never felt him falter in his grip. He leaned against the rising of the land as we ascended to an outlook ridge. When Zeno reached the summit, he collapsed. We saw the town of Bethlehem below. "We'll wait here till it's dark," the tall one said, "and see the place the star would have us go." The last few hours of daylight slipped away. As evening fell, the star shined once again. I worried we had many miles to go. I couldn't see a palace anywhere. The wise men watched and waited patiently. Somehow they knew we'd reached the proper place. And just as I grew worried they were wrong, the star erupted brighter than the sun. A pillar of starlight cut through the sky. The blaring of a trumpet shook the earth. 10,000 white doves scattered in the light and formed as angels right before our eyes. And as the heavenly choir began to sing, they danced in circles high above the ground. The ray of light descended from above and landed on a shabby-looking barn. Confusion nearly cracked my golden shell. That barn would be too humble for a cow. And yet I heard the wise man give a laugh. Of course he would, the short one took a bow. If not for what I saw and heard that night, I wouldn't have believed it could be so. But I was there, I witnessed it myself. The Son of God was born inside a shed. The wise men bent and helped their master rise. Then Zeno gently pushed them both away. With shoulders back, he raised his chin up high and started on his own steam down the hill. The younger wise men followed close behind, an honor guard for someone they both loved. The singing of the choir began to fade and settled to a quiet, reverent hum. In minutes, we had made it to the place. The manger sat directly in the light. As we approached, we saw a group of men, a ragtag palace guard for the new king. A massive man stepped forward. "Greetings, friends. Not everyone has eyes to see these signs. I trust you will be reverent and discreet." His heavy hands held forth a shepherd's staff. "I see you are a servant of our king." The taller wise man bowed and touched his heart. "We've traveled many miles beneath the star, with one who has grown gray to serve our Lord. It warms our hearts to see such sturdy guards, and shepherds now seem such a likely choice. Our only real desire is to kneel before our newborn king this holy night." The big man smiled and nodded. "Very well. We'll keep our watch while Daniel leads you in." He whistled, and a boy but 10 years old stepped forward to take Zeno by the hand. Then gently through the manger door we pressed, then softly through the straw-strewn stable stepped. Young Daniel led us to a little trough, and Zeno fell down to his knees and wept. From where I was, I couldn't see a thing, for Zeno's hands were pressed against the ground. I felt his fingers tremble as he tried to whisper, but he could not make a sound. A gentle-looking man stepped into view and pulled the other wise men to a hug. He smiled as he accepted both their gifts, then bent and lifted wise old Zeno up. "I'm Joseph, Magi," said the gentle man. "I welcome you to this most humble place. I'd hoped to find a more befitting roof, yet somehow this old stable feels just right." A laughing, sobbing choke tore Zeno's throat. He lifted me. I saw his tear-filled eyes. He pressed me to his lips, and then I knew this moment here would be our last goodbye. Then Zeno dropped me into Joseph's grasp, whose fingers wrapped around my golden shell. His skin was dry and coarse, a worker's hands, yet gentle as his eyes fell down on me. "A mighty gift fit for a mighty king," said Joseph as he looked back up again. My sight found Zeno's shaking form, and I saw how much pride he felt at Joseph's words. "How lovely," said a woman's gentle voice. The sound of it sent shivers through my shell. Then I beheld the fairest woman I had ever seen or read or dreamed about. I fell into her tender open palm. Her skin was softer than a velvet cloth. "This is a very special gift you give. Let's see what little Jesus thinks of it." Anticipation thundered through my heart. This was the moment I had waited for. The lovely woman tilted me to see the newborn King of Kings, the Prince of Peace. I do not know what I expected then. He seemed a normal baby to my eyes. But then his mother placed me in his hands, and at his touch I burst with golden light. Hosanna, I saw time outside of time. Hosanna, from beginning to the end. Hosanna, all creation filled my mind. Hosanna, when the very earth was made. Hosanna, I saw God upon his throne. Hosanna, I saw children made of light. Hosanna, I could feel the Father's love. Hosanna, for the first of them, a son. Hosanna, I saw Jesus as a man. Hosanna, watched him walk upon the sea. Hosanna, saw him cause the lame to walk. Hosanna, saw him make a blind man see. Hosanna, in a garden Jesus wept. Hosanna, then he died upon a cross. Hosanna, he was buried in a tomb. Hosanna, then he broke the chains of death. 12. I do not know how long my mind was gone, nor can I speak of all the things I saw. The future was no different from the past. It was to me all one eternal round. I tumbled in the fullness of the light, and passed through shades of glory as I fell. I heard the horns of heaven in a blast. I felt the shaking of the gates of hell. I stood there in the middle of all time, a witness to the motion of a plan that had been written on the earth before that earth's creation had begun. And as each endless moment passed me by, I contemplated, wondered, and adored that every grain of gold within my shell was centered in that single tiny hand. When I returned to myself once again, I couldn't say how many days had passed. The three wise men were nowhere to be seen. I wasn't in a manger anymore. In fact, at first I didn't have a clue. No hint at where I'd finally ended up. I was inside a clean and quiet room with simple, plain, and pleasant wooden walls. I heard a little sniffle to my right. My sight fell on a sleeping baby boy. I recognized his plump and peaceful face. I marveled at his chest's soft rise and fall, the beating of his tiny little heart, the little lamb who came to save us all. In that pure piece of heaven I beheld the most important baby in the world. I sat and watched him sleeping for a while. I couldn't believe how much he had grown. He was no longer newborn, I expect. I must have spent a year outside my mind. As I considered all the things I'd seen, I felt a shiver on my shell again. When I looked up, the baby was awake. His eyes were firmly fixed upon my face. "Hello, Lord Jesus," I said in my mind. His eyebrows raised up higher and he smiled. He stood up tall on shaky, pudgy legs and leaned against the smooth wood of his crib. He watched me with those clear and ancient eyes. I felt as though I might fall once again, to spin in heaven's glory for all time. But then the door swung open on smooth pins. His lovely mother walked into the room. "I always seem to know when you wake up. My funny boy who never seems to cry, and yet I never wonder what you want." Then Mother Mary picked her baby up. "Come, Jesus, we've got lots to do today." and though they were no longer in the room, I felt his presence linger in my heart. The sun went down as I was lost in thought, among the other toys in Jesus' room. This was no palace throne room, not by far, but I found I no longer cared a bit. In fact, I felt ashamed of what I'd been, so proud and foolish, desperate to be seen. Now I would trade the praise of every eye to know that I'm known perfectly by him. The door clicked open once again to show the mother and her baby enter in. Then little Jesus gave a little coo and listened as his mom began to sing. Forever my love, tomorrow my light, as long as I live, my baby you'll be. With that, sweet Mary picked me up and touched me gently to the sleeping baby's cheek. I instantly burst into golden light and cast a gentle glow around the room. The heavens wheeled before me in my sight as Mary turned and closed the bedroom door. I stared in humble adoration as the King of Kings snored softly in his bed. That I should be a nightlight for this child, there was no higher honor I could have. The days and weeks passed much like this as I gave more and more of myself to my king. I watched him sweetly slumber as I glowed to comfort him if he should ever stir. Then when the sun came up, my light would fade. I watched until he woke again and stood. I might have been mistaken, though I felt that when he first woke up, he looked at me. I didn't mind him drooling on my face. It never bothered me to be his toy. It could not have been less of a disgrace to give the Son of God a little joy. I watched as Jesus took his first few steps and knew he'd someday walk upon the sea. I heard him make his first few babbling words and thought upon the great things he would say. He was not clad in golden diapers or put down to sleep upon a golden bed. In fact, I think the only golden side their humble home in Galilee was me. And yet the house was well fit for a king. Its sturdy walls were built with sturdy hands, and Mary was a finer servant than a king could call with hundreds to command. The peace I felt while living in their home will warm me for 1,000 years, and if I never see the sky again, I'll still be grateful I was touched by him. I wouldn't trade a moment of that time for any fame or glory I might have. The things I once desired were in my past. My future would belong to Jesus Christ. But even though I wished they'd never end, each time of peace can only last so long. On one day that had started all the same, the gentle Joseph ran back to his home. I heard the door swing open with a bang. I heard their worried voices through the walls. And when I saw sweet Mary once again, I couldn't miss the teardrops in her eyes. As Jesus watched his mother rush around the room to gather things into a bag, as Joseph fetched the donkey from the yard, I felt a crawling doom upon my shell. What evil had disturbed this precious peace? What cruelty had brought tears to Mary's eyes? In minutes, all their bags were packed, and then the Holy Family fled into the night. 13. I cast my golden light upon the stones, as gentle Joseph held me in his hand. He led a sturdy donkey step by step, that carried on its back the fate of man. Fair Mary tucked her babe against her chest, for warmth against the chilly desert night. As far as I could tell, the baby slept, a blessing, for they dared not let him cry. We scrambled over broken, craggy scrub, away from grasping hands and prying eyes. We could not chance to be seen on the roads, for evil men were searching through the night. The call had come forth from King Herod's throne, a vicious tyrant with an empty soul, to send his soldiers into every home, to kill all baby boys not 2 years old. What madness could compel such grievous sin? What hollow heart could conjure such a scheme? Foul Herod's crooked ear had heard the claim, a child of prophecy had just been born. But rather than give praises to the babe, the long-awaited savior of mankind, King Herod clinged to his own wretched throne and did his best to kill the promised child. I do not know what kind heart thought of us and warned the Holy Family of the plot. Whoever it was foiled the devil's plans and gave us precious hours of fair head start. We knew the soldiers weren't far behind, for many people knew about the babe. A well-respected tradesman and a wife, so fair as Mary, would not go unnamed. And so we staggered through the wilderness, as quickly as the donkey's hooves could trot. We dared not stop for any moment's rest, or meet with any strangers on our road. When once we passed by brigands in a camp, they stood and cast their greedy eyes on us. But when they ventured out, we disappeared. They could not find our footprints in the dust. I heard the mother's fervent wishful prayer, as Joseph set the pace with all his might. Fair Mary's prayers ascended to the sky, to hide us from the enemies of light. I heard good Joseph's whispered prayer as well, so quietly that Mary could not hear. I'd gladly give my life to keep them safe. If that's the price required, I am here. We struggled and we strained to reach the top of mountains, then slid down the other slope. It was a black and empty moonless sky that did not shed a single ray of light. So I was forced to plumb the depths within, my golden heart to find sufficient strength, to glow enough to guide my family out and get them all to safety somewhere else. The question yet remained of where to go. We did not know the length of Herod's arm. The carpenter would not accept the risks, to trust his family's fate to even friends. The power of the wicked king was great. His soldiers were both diligent and cruel. The only certain way we could be safe was leaving Herod's kingdom far behind. When dawn began to light the morning sky, the little Jesus stirred awake from sleep. The town of Galilee, now far away, and Mary bid them stop and take a break. When Joseph asked to press to the next rise, fair Mary shared a look that all men know. A woman, even one so meek and mild, will not be gladly moved when she says no. So Joseph wisely dropped the donkey's lead and helped his lady off the donkey's back. She thanked him with a kiss upon his cheek, then turned to tend her baby for a while. When Joseph saw they both were settled in, he said he'd climb up to the ridge himself. He wanted to take stock of where they were and see if he could scout the way to go. By habit, Joseph kept me in his hand and brought me with him as he walked ahead. We reached the top and looked upon the land. I wondered at the thoughts inside his head. As though somehow he heard my hidden heart, he answered, "Which way should I take us now? I do not know much of the country north, and little more of Egypt to the south." I flared a bit to hear him speak of home, the land of Egypt where I had been born. I thought of old Auletes and was sure that he would take us in and keep us safe. I wondered then how long I had been gone. My sense of time does not work as yours does. It might be many years since I last left the court of King Auletes in the past. I saw your light grow brighter, little egg. Perhaps we'll go to Egypt after all. I wonder if we'll find a friendly face, said Joseph as he turned us to the south. I don't know what you are inside that shell, but thus far you have not led us astray. I'll take you down to Mary for a while I go find a quiet place to pray. Then gentle Joseph did just as he said, and left me sitting in fair Mary's lap, while Jesus sat beside her on the ground, intently staring at a little bug. I wondered if he recognized the thing. He seemed to have a fondness for all life, but if the insect recognized its king, it scurried rudely off without a bow. I worried in that instant we would fail, that Herod's men would catch us in our flight. Then Mary said to Jesus, "Do not fear. I know my husband, he will find a way. He's not your average carpenter, my dear. I've never wondered at your father's choice, to pick someone like Joseph to protect and teach you how to be a noble man." A moment later, Joseph had returned, and little Jesus smiled to see him there. He gently lifted Mary to her feet and brushed away a strand of fallen hair. "I've prayed to know the will of God above," said Joseph as he lifted Jesus up. "It won't be easy getting there, my love, but Egypt is the place we're meant to go." 14. The road to Egypt was not smooth at all, particularly not while off the roads. But Joseph was no stranger to hard work, nor Mary, so they cut a decent pace. We rested in the shade throughout the day, then made our movements under cloak of night. It would have been impossible to see, except they had a glowing golden egg. They rationed their supplies as best they could. Their meals were meager things to say the least, and when the food they had was running short, good Joseph had to leave in search of more. He left Mary and Jesus somewhere safe. Most times he left me sitting there as well. He'd wander in disguise to the next town, and barter for as much food as he could. For all the family's virtues, they were not a wealthy bunch by any measure, and the money they had managed to save up was not enough to last them very long. With Mary's whispered worries in his ear, good Joseph shared the makings of a plan. If only they could cross the border south, they'd get back onto normal roads again. And then he'd find a place where they could live. He'd open up a new carpenter's shop. But though his plan was as good as could be, it suffered from a single fatal flaw. The people of the towns he visited, in search of food to feed his family, were not inclined to generosity and bargained hard for every crust of bread. So he was forced to sell his craftsman's tools, and day by day his bag of tools grew light. He knew it was their future that he sold. Unfortunate, but what choice did he have? I saw the lines grow deeper on his face. His worried, furrowed brow grew heavier. He did his best to bear his burdens well, but Mary saw the weight upon his back. When I was left with Mary and the babe, I never saw a prayer far from her lips. She held her precious baby close and wept, with worry at the future they would have. Until she saw her husband had returned, then she would do her best to hide her tears. She smiled and thanked him for all his hard work, then broke the bread and made a meal for them. I saw the way they carried separate pain, and marveled at the way they shared their strength. With those two noble people in our camp, my faith in our success grew day by day. When sorrow seemed to drag upon their souls, and I could see their shoulders start to slump, the baby Jesus offered them a smile, and filled their hearts with courage, faith, and joy. We finally reached the border to the south, and crossed into the kingdom of the Nile. The Holy Family praised their God above, and made it onto better roads at last. Their travel went more swiftly from that point, and soon they covered many easy miles. They celebrated sleep again at night, and walked like normal people through the day. At first, when they no longer needed me, I worried I might feel a bitter loss. But now all my ambition went away. My gratitude replaced the loss with love. When laughter finally came back to our camp, I knew that we had made it after all. The Holy Family's joy replaced their fear, and soon they were themselves again at last. We traveled through the land I once called home, until we reached a valley by a lake. A little town was pressed against the shore, and green crops grew along the fertile strip. "This is the place, I think," good Joseph said, and I could see that Mary felt the same. They finally had reached their journey's end. They walked into the pretty little town. They introduced themselves as travelers. The townsfolk greeted them with open arms. They all seemed very taken with the babe, and by the lovely woman who held him. When Joseph asked some men about his craft, they told him of a shop upon a hill. We made our way up to the tidy house, and knocked upon a sturdy wooden door. The man who opened up was bent with age. He squinted at the brightness of the light. The Holy Family introduced themselves. The old man bid them welcome to his home. Good Joseph asked if he had any work. An honest man might do for honest pay. The old man laughed and said, "I have too much, now that my only son has gone away." I saw the light in gentle Joseph's eyes. He saw it as an opportunity. But Mary, always loving, asked the man, "What happened to your son, my wise old friend?" "He marched away to war a year ago, and joined the Roman Emperor's campaigns. He clothed himself in glory, then he found a pretty girl up north and settled down." The old man scratched his gray and grizzled beard. "I'd dearly like to see my son again. He has a little daughter of his own, and lives as a full citizen of Rome. If I were 10 years younger, I would go, but now I'd have to hire a caravan. Besides, I've got this shop to think about. All that I own is tied up in this place." The group all sat in silence in the shop, and wondered at the best way to proceed. Good Joseph had his youth and skill and strength. The old man had a well-outfitted shop. The Holy Family was moving to town. The old man wanted to move somewhere else. They all sensed there was some deal to be had, but couldn't see the way to make it work. If Joseph simply worked within the shop, it would take years to buy the old man out. But he'd already spent all that they had, just getting to the doorstep of their fate. As they all stood and puzzled, my heart soared. I knew the answer to their common plight. I fixed my sight on baby Jesus and I filled that little home with golden light. 15. The Holy Family bought their home with me. They thanked me, though the honor was all mine. The old man now had gold to make his trip. The family now had a place to live. It was a simple, elegant design, and all could sense the hand of heaven there. I found my greatest destiny at last. As coin between two carpenters, I passed. You might think I was sorry at my lot, just traded in some tiny nowhere town. No doubt the egg I once was would have thought that I deserved more glory than I got. But such thoughts were now far, far from my mind. The years of pain and travel had changed me. And as I found the reason I was made, my mind reflected on the life I'd led. In fiery flaming furnace I was forged, and covered up in priceless jewels and gems. I was a prideful gift to a proud king, an opulent adornment made for man. All while his people toiled beneath the sun, and scratched a meager living from the dirt, their lazy king was making golden eggs, and playing with his flute while Rome advanced. An aging kingdom spent its wealth on me. Then Rome took me by power of the sword. A greedy petty captain met his end by flaunting me in hopes of some renown. My gold and gems drew yet more greed until another sword lashed out and claimed his prize. It left him lying bleeding in the sand, without a copper penny to his name. Then I was brought back to the bandits' cave, where I inspired envy and dissent. And when the killing started up again, a brave young lady snatched me up and went. She traded me for horses and moved on, and left me in a blighted city where I learned how cruel and nasty men could be if they could not control their heart's desires. I had been bathed in blood inspired by greed. I saw the wasted lives of slothful men. I generated envy with my light, then wrath as people turned against their friends. Their gluttony was funded by my price, while others paid for balms to soothe their lust. Yet all the while I clung on to my pride, for gold as pure as me can never rust. By every hollow master I was scarred. They dug the precious gems out of my skin. The strength of my indignity would rise, but through it all I still refused to see. For even in the midst of all that sin, and all the wages of that sort of life, I never stopped to see the soul within, and think of every master as a child. I hated every one of them as they so obviously failed to see in me the glory of what I was made to be, and so they simply treated me like coin. I landed in a leper's rotting hands, that king of thieves who wasted with a curse, and far from being treasured I was cast onto a pile of spoiled and tarnished toys. Yet even then I held on to my pride. I still expected someday I would be the finest treasure lifted up on high, a spectacle for all the world to see. Then wise old Zeno stood before the king, and somehow he saw then what I could be. He won my freedom from the leper king. In several ways that old man rescued me. In Zeno's hands I learned about the world. I started seeing people through his eyes. I watched him as he mended broken bones, and healed their broken hearts and minds as well. Each night while he sat reading, he would rub his gentle fingers all around my shell. He soothed away the scars upon my skin, and left me pure and gleaming once again. Then Zeno and his students took me out, in answer to the calling of a star. I watched him pour his life out step by step, to give me to the newborn King of Kings. Then little Jesus touched me, and I saw the fullness of eternity laid bare. I saw the little part I had to play, and filled with love, accepted then and there. I knew that day it would not be my fate to tarry long at my new master's side. I saw in my own life the smallest way to mirror the great sacrifice he'd make. If he would give his life to save the world, then I could give my glory to serve him. And when I let the light within me go, I knew at once that he had saved my soul. Of course, I felt a little sorrow when I left the Holy Family in the past. Goodbyes to those we love will always sting. When love is true, it won't part easily. And yet I know goodbye is not the end. Though now I'm lost, he'll find me once again. And one day I hope to sit in his hand and give my gold light to him for all time. I'd like to tell you now that I returned back to my palace window on the Nile. But Egypt's king no longer ruled the land. The wheels of history have rolled along. The carpenter who sold Joseph his shop used me to buy him passage to his son. A merchant then exchanged me for some coins to some rich Roman banker in the West. While I was being carted back to Rome, inside a chest atop a camel's back, an adder nipped the camel on its heel. The startled beast then took off at a sprint. The merchants picked up all the scattered gold, except a golden egg which rolled downhill. I landed in a crag within the rock. There I was left, and there I remained still. But do not pity me, my mortal friend, for I do not count years the way you do. I know how life's great mystery will end, and there is still much work for you to do. I'll be here when my Savior comes again, to rule upon the earth forevermore. I count myself as blessed to be his friend, and wonder at the wonders left in store. Come, mortal, and give heed to what I say. I speak to you from ages long ago. I am the Golden Egg of Auletes, the treasure of a mighty king of old. My glory and my light remain unmatched. My purpose softly pulses through the years. And though I lie forgotten in the sand, you yet would do well lending me your ears. No piece of gold has ever matched my worth. No trinket lived the wondrous life I've lived. No bauble ever wandered as I have, nor knew the hands and hearts that I have known. I passed through fire and flame upon my birth, then blood to blood I journeyed toward the heights. From king to king I traveled ever on, until I found the greatest of them all. I was composed of pure and precious gold, the finest of an ancient dynasty. The men who forged me melted ancient coins, far older than the Sphinx upon the sand. Through time beyond all time my tale survived, a whisper buried deep beneath the earth. I hold the greatest story ever told, so listen now and let it stir your soul. My shape was crafted by 100 hands, my destiny by many hundreds more. I was the finest treasure in the land, a gleaming prize no mortal could ignore. And though my fame has faded with the years, I yet will rise to purpose once again. For when I'm lifted from these ancient sands, my light will shine before the world once more. If you knew but a fraction of my path, you'd bow your head and wonder where you stand. If you had seen a tenth of what I've seen, your every sure conviction would collapse. My wisdom and my memory endure, my burden and my blessing are the same. And though my shell lies tarnished by the years, the light I bear will never fade away. I've felt the turning of the wheels of time, I've watched the rise and ruin of the proud. I know the way that mighty empires fall, and how the small can shame the greatest throne. The stars above have wheeled before my sight, as countless generations pass me by. Yet still I wait, preserving what I saw, a truth too strong for dust to hide away. I am a precious treasure in the sand, though none who walk the earth recall my name. No mortal fully grasps the things I've borne, the wonders pressed forever in my heart. My glow may dim, my gold may gather grime, but that which burns within remains unchanged. I testify to you, my mortal friend, I'll stand again when lesser kingdoms fall. And on the day the world is made anew, when all that's hidden rises to the light, the tale I carry shall be told again, and all the earth will see what I have seen. The fire that forged me once will forge again. If you are wise, then it will forge you too. And in that moment, all will know the truth. Of this, my story, I now give to you.